All right, in this week's video, we are going to Oklahoma and visiting with the Roger Raglin. Roger is a pioneer of the world of hunting that we know here today, and you get to check out one of the most impressive trophy rooms in the country. We hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go.
All right, come on in. I'm Roger Raglin, and this is my little man cave. Jiminy Christmas! Holy cow! Jiminy Christmas! So, thought I'll just show you around. I got a couple of whitetails right here. They're kind of out of place because I've got most of my whitetails down here. This is a Saskatchewan buck, 10-pointer I killed a few years ago with a muzzleloader, and this is my first northern Missouri buck, old Crooked Horn. I went on that hunt because of a cancellation. I had a mule deer hunt canceled in New Mexico back in 1994, and a buddy of mine from Tulsa, I remember he'd killed a big buck in northern Missouri, and I called him and I said, didn't you kill a big buck in northern Missouri last year? He goes, yeah, a friend of mine took me. I said, well, give me his name. And he wasn't going to give me his name. I said, look, I just looking for a place to hunt. I got a cancellation. The Missouri Rifle opened that Saturday. And a Perry model. He gave me the guy's name, Kansas City. He goes, yeah, come up, go hunting with me. Drove up there, and first weekend, that's about 165-inch deer. Killed my first big buck. And a week later, Perry called me and said, you told me if I ever killed a big one, come up, that you want to come up. I said, well, all right. So I met him halfway. He killed a 201-inch 5x5. Gordon Whittington from North American Whitetail, who's a friend of mine. Gordon says it's his favorite typical of all time. So there's my Australian water, we got a little fuzz on him. Australian water buffalo. My blessed buck. I got a chance to go to Africa a few times 20 years ago. And this is an 18-inch blessed buck with 7-inch bases. That's like a 250-inch whitetail. Their professional hunters drove for hours because they'd never seen one this big. And I shot him and I said, they're all jumping up and down hollering. I'm just thinking, is that a good one? He turned out to be a pretty good one. This is the hog from Hades. This is an Oklahoma hog. He was #1 SCI for years. That's his real tooth. Pulled a 12-inch tooth. And he's 113 inches long. We figured he weighed about 1,100 pounds. So I know what it's like to kill a big hog. No, we didn't eat him. We wanted to. You could just smell him. Boy, he was a stinky sucker. But I guess most people like to look at and for me to talk about the whitetail collection. And I guess that I have been enthralled with whitetails because anybody and everybody can hunt them. They're available just to everyone, and they're all so unique and different. And the old mature buck, the older buck, they're just hard. They're a tough animal to hunt. And it took me a while to get a few of them, but I've been pretty fortunate. This row down here are some of my bigger deer, I guess. But that's a 180-inch buck, South Texas buck. You can tell by his body, he probably weighed 135, 40 pounds. Rattled him in. A cold morning there in South Texas, and got him on the ground. Up above him is a famous South Dakota buck called the moose buck. And everybody in the county was after that deer. And it never happens, for somebody like me, to get to but I'd heard stories about the moose buck, and on a windy day, it was the only time in all my years of filming whitetail hunts. I got up that morning at daylight. Now rain shuts us down, pouring down rain shuts us down because of our equipment. But the wind was blowing so hard, I went next door to my cameraman, Marv, and I I said, we're not hunting today. I said, it's too windy. It's too windy it'd be dangerous for us to get up in these little old trees we were hunting out of. And so I canceled our hunt. And about noon, we drove just north of Pierce, South Dakota, about 20 miles. We drove over to the property, and the guy that lived on the property said, where have you been? I said, well, the wind's blowing 35, 40 miles an hour. He goes, the deer are running everywhere. I said, what? He goes, I want you, go get in your tree right now. I said, holy cow. So we went and got our tree, and I'll never forget, Marvin, we tied ourselves together. We had this rope thing, and we tied it, and we're in these little old trees like this, trying to sit in these trees, blowing like this. And the moose buck walked out across this stubble field to us and started working the scrape at about 75 yards. And I'm just about to come in, bow hunting. I'm about to come unglued, you know. And he's standing there next to a doe, and Marvin said, why are you so excited? I said, look, that's a mature doe. And the top of her back come up to the bottom of his belly. He was enormous, giant. Of course, I'm trying to grunt it. You know, it's 40-mile-an-hour winds. And we're laughing. Hey, I'm yelling at the top of my voice, hey, over here, stupid, hey. He couldn't hear us, you know. He worked the scrape, turned around, and walked out across that stubble field over out of sight. Well, my Lord, what a neat, giant body. The next morning, we're in our tree, daylight. You could drop a feather and it would fall to the ground like this. There was no wind. Just at the crack of dawn, I mean, you talk about first light. I looked down and the moose buck is standing literally 5-7 yards right underneath us. And I leaned up to Marv, I go, the moose buck. And the camera was hanging up in the tree, and my bow was hanging up. And he looked out in that stubble field was a doe. And I thought, he's gonna go to that doe. And there was a big cedar tree right out here, right. I thought, if he goes around behind that cedar tree, Marvin, and he walked and he cut around that cedar tree, and luckily that doe was walking. But I grabbed my bow, and Marv grabbed the camera. I slung, and he almost had his rear end to us, you know. But it's about 20 yards. Just a little bit of snow on the ground, and I hit him right in this hip. The arrow went through here, cut both lungs, went through his heart, and come out the right shoulder, and it was sticking in the ground. And he ran around, and I lost him. I thought, what? There was one other tree there, another cedar. Which way to go? Which way to go? Which way? I hit him. You know. And I thought, I'm getting down. I jumped down and walked around that tree, and I stepped it off. He ran 35 yards and piled up, you know. And I got up to him, and I picked him up. If he'd matched, he'd be like a 180-inch deer, but that was pretty exciting. And he field dressed 235 pounds. There's my little albino. Killed that buck in Kentucky. He's not albino. Albino deer have pink eyes. He was totally white though. And he was a 4-year-old. He was a 4-year-old deer, as big as he's ever going to get, or was ever going to be. But that was my piebald. I got some stuff. Here's my South Texas buck from last year on the Freeholea. Been down there 12 years, pushing 160. He'd been a 160-inch deer if he hadn't have broke some stuff off, you know. I decided to go ahead and shoot him, even though he was missing a tine or two. That was an exciting deal. This is my, if you see right here, he's got a hole in his horn. The first shot, when I shot this buck, he's a 167-inch deer, not quite 170. But when I shot this buck, watched him for a long time, and I'm fighting buck fever. And people ask me, you still get buck fever? Well, listen, buddy, if you don't get buck fever, why are you going? Why, you know, I'm fighting buck fever, and he was quartering to me, and I knocked him down, but he got up. And here's a great tip that I like to tell all hunters. Shoot until he don't get up. I made a good shot. Well, if he's up on his feet, you need to shoot again. shoot until the animal stays on the ground. Well, he stood up. When he stood back up, man, I'm jellied all over. It ain't like I ain't never killed a big, that's just 3 years ago. And that next shot, right there, I hit him in the horn. And he fell, and he tried to get up again. Well, I put another round into him, but he was a beautiful deer. That's a Michigan buck, 170-inch Michigan buck. This is my buck. This is the buck that should have never been. He's if you want to know what a 170-inch 8-pointer looks like, this is what a 170-inch 8-pointer looks like. And Alberta buck, and get into camp, and the guy that was going to guide us said, what do you think about 8-pointers? I said, well, I like 8-pointers if they're big ones. He goes, I'm going to put you in a blind where there's a big 8-pointer. And the short version of it is I ended up killing this deer the next day, and we get back to camp, and I'm pretty pumped. I didn't realize he was a 170-inch deer, but we got back to camp, and the guide comes over, and he goes, yep, that's that big 8. I said, yeah. He goes, I had a hunter, and all he said was he was an older gentleman. He goes, I had an older gentleman last week sitting in that blind. He goes, and he wasn't looking out, he was facing me. He goes, and this buck stepped out at daylight. I said, sir, I think maybe you need to get your rifle and take a look at this deer right here. He said, and the old fellow said, well, what is he? And I said, well, he's a big 8-pointer. He said, I ain't shooting no 8-pointers. If he ain't got 10 points, I ain't going to shoot him. So he wasn't even supposed to be here, but I'm glad the old fella decided to not even take a look at him. And that, I don't think I'll probably ever get to kill a 170-inch deer like that again. I got a bunch of stuff here scattered on. See, this is a chamois from New Zealand. I killed him on the top of a mountain in New Zealand, and I got off the mountain, and they took me to the emergency room. They'd like to kill me. You talk about a tough hunt. I was 53 years old then. I'm sure not ever going to go back and do that again. My biggest Texas buck, South Texas, 190-inch buck that stepped out into the field, and I was pretty excited to see. He's a clean 7x7, and it's too bad he's got this acorn thing here. You know, I almost didn't shoot him because I thought, oh, that's deformed. No. This is the buck we call Jimbo. He was my first 200-inch deer. He's about 206, and luckily got a error in him in the early season there in northern Missouri. I clean these things. There's southern Kansas buck. He's a 192 buck. There's my best Ohio buck. He's a 195-inch deer. You know, some of the neat stories, though, is, see this buck right back here, old One Horn. I rattled and grunted that buck in. He come charging in. He was a mean, cantankerous buck. I shot at point blank range from the ground with my bow a number of years ago. That's my biggest buck, Saskatchewan buck. He's 220, and he was really, I didn't realize he was that good of a deer, and he just glancing at him. But you look at the mass, and when you look at your big deer, your bigger bucks, they have to have the frame. And the key number for a whitetail deer to get into what we will call world-class status is a 25-inch main beam. When you get into bucks have 24, 25, 26-inch, they have these frames. And this buck is a 27-inch main beams, just like this 195 buck. He's got 27-inch main beams, 25, 26, 27-inch main beams. When they have the frame there, then they get some size on them. That's my only big Iowa buck. I've been to Iowa, 8 times, and killed one good deer, and 193-incher. So I was glad to kill him at close range. That's another Ohio buck over here. He's in the 190s. This is my wife's buck, and typically we've had it in the house before, But she says she gets tired of cleaning it, so I brought it down here. In about 15 years ago or so, my wife and I were in a horrific boat accident on Lake Erie. And we were fortunate enough to survive, but my wife got the worst of it. She had a horrible cut in her cheek. Her mouth drooped for a long time. She had nerve damage. It busted her leg. She had broken ribs. It just, you know, and ladies, and my wife's a beautiful, but ladies are much more conscious about scars and things, and it did something to her mentally. And I just couldn't get her out of that. And we had a hunt with Mark Hamilton. I hunt with Mark every year, North Texas, the Panhandle. And we tricked my wife. I called Mark and I told him what we were going to do. And I had come from the East Coast. I'd been hunting in the Carolinas, and I was late getting home. And I come by the house and I said, you know, I got to go to North Texas in the morning. She goes, yeah, I know. I said, and I don't feel good. I said, so I want you to come with me on this trip. She said, what? I said, yeah, I already had a babysitter lined up to watch the kids. So we had it all planned out. So we get out there, and the morning I'm supposed to go hunting, I got up and I told my wife, I said, I just can't go. I physically can't go. There's something wrong with me. You're going to have to go. And, oh, she didn't like that, you know. Of course, she didn't know what we were doing. And so we got her in front of the camera, you know, and I had already, I'd brought her camo. She did, you know, we got her all, and that hunt that morning, she, you know, we didn't see a whole lot, but that afternoon, you know, she come back and you know, she felt better. She felt better about being out among the people and being on the camera. And we went out, and all the footage is, there was this buck and another, like 160 class type 10-pointer out there about 250, 300 yards. And of course, we also tricked her. You know, she's shooting my 270 short mag, you know, and it's got a little bit of a, you know, and when she pulled the trigger, I mean, she hit him. He just fell, you know. And the camera goes back, and she said, this gun just knocked the beep out of me. Oh, but it was quite a deal. And that hunt from then on, after we did that hunt, it just like it got her out of her shell, and she got back to being the old Darlene herself, you know. So I mean, you talk about a North Texas, big-bodied, beautiful buck. And it's probably going to be the best buck that she'll ever get. I told her, I said, I ain't ever going to take you again. You're going to start killing all the big bucks, you know. I call it the pile. We got the wall, now we got the pile. I got a pile started over here of whitetail antlers that's just, there's some really, really good. In fact, well, there's a 180. There's some good ones in here that one of these days maybe I'll get around to around a mountain. But this is my Rhinelander buck from northern Wisconsin. He's in the 180s. Bitter cold day on this buck. Opening day of rifle, about 96 in Wisconsin. Oh, it was cold. Went back to warm up. Hunted that morning, went back to warm up, and my cameraman, Marv, we both overslept. I woke up, and it was like 3 o'clock. I went, oh, my Lord. I called Marv and said, we got to go. It's 3 o'clock. It's about a 30-minute drive from town to where we were hunting. And normally, we would park the truck and then walk in. I said, look, I'm just going to drive right down, unload, shooting on a Betacam like this. I'm just going to drive down, so you can unload the Betacam. I said, and then I'll park over here, and you know, and we just top the hill and get down towards the blind, look up, and this buck is bird dogging a doe all over this field. And there's a little old spike watching. And of course, you know, when they're running a doe, they don't. So we just jumped out of the truck and got the camera set up and run around. You want him? Yeah. And I'll never forget, he ran, and you could see a little old spruce tree or something. It shook. You could see the top of the tree shake. When he ran over, crest over, he ran into that tree when he fell. And we got over to that tree, and the second, of course, I didn't realize that he was this good. I didn't realize he's got all kind of points back here. You know, I thought he's about 150-inch deer. I didn't know he's in the 180s. Both of these bucks, if you don't think that water is important, you know, I got a video called, in fact, it was the last Whitetail Encyclopedia. It's the last video I ever did. And there's 10 segments to that. And one of the most important ones is the importance of water on a problem. Water is extremely important when you're a whitetail deer hunter. Pay attention to what water. The Kansas, the year I killed this buck in Kansas, it was muzzleload. It was end of September. It was hot and dry that year. And the fact is, I killed these bucks a week apart. That year, it was in 2001. Hot, dry summer in September, hot and dry. And the guy had put out a water trough and was keeping it filled with water. And this buck came into that water trough in the middle of the afternoon to drink. And I'm muzzleload hunting and cut down on him. And I knew he was a good one. I knew he was a good one. But I had another guy from over towards Oklahoma City had called me. And he said, I got a couple of pretty good deer, Roger, that are coming in. He goes, and I'm just setting out. Maybe I shouldn't tell you this. He said, I'm just setting out fresh 5-gallon pails of water every day. And those bucks are coming up and they're drinking, the deer are coming in and drinking that fresh water. If you could put fresh water out. And we put out some trail cameras and got a trail camera picture of this buck. I didn't realize he was this good. I said, we threw a ground blind up 1 week before the season opened, threw a ground blind up, and actually put a trough out there, filled it with fresh water. And the opening day of bow season, that afternoon, this buck came in with another buck. And the other buck was a shooter, you know. But he was in, you know, a lot of people have looked at the footage and say, why didn't you shoot that other one? Well, I'm going to shoot whatever buck comes in first. And he was in the lead, and about 22 yards, I got a muzzy in him, the old MX4. Ain't nothing like an MX4, let me tell you. And he's a 183-inch deer, and he ended up being my biggest Oklahoma whitetail to date. But I killed these two bucks about 10 days apart, both of them really 180-inch deer, and water. Killed them over water. Fresh water. Water is so important. But in here is where I spend most of my time. This is where I edit the shows. You come in here and look around. On the shelves are the old 3/4-inch Masters Betacam of 35 years of filming. Probably 60, 70,000 minutes of video in this room. And this is where I say the magic happens. Spent a lot of time editing and putting the stuff together, and have been very, very fortunate, a very fortunate, very blessed man to have a good wife and healthy children, and getting ready to, this next summer, have my 50th anniversary high school reunion. My 50th, it's just hard to believe it's been that long. When we all get together, you know, we'll all have different stories to tell, but I think my story may top everybody's, because for the majority of my adult life, I have gotten to do what I love to do, what I thoroughly enjoy, and make a living at it. And when you get to do that, I think the only thing you can say is thank you, Lord, and realize what a blessed person that you have had. What a blessed life I have had a chance to live. And now I get to reflect on, this is just elements of what I've got to do in my life. And I pay tribute to all of these animals, and I pay tribute to God for allowing me to do what I love to do for so long. Thanks for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed the tour.